Hey YouTube, hello there. It's First Stage. I'm back with another video. Hope you're well. I'm here to talk about Dragonbane, which is Free League's just recently concluded Kickstarter of a new game, a new fantasy game, a game that's new but also old. And I want to talk about that because I've got the tingles again. I've got the tingles for it. I can't help myself. Those of you who follow my channel, you'll know that I have occasional tingles. I'm just afflicted by it. Go and look at the Cepheus Deluxe video. I'll talk about that. I think it's a great science fiction role-playing game. I've since played it, run it. It is fantastic. This is a fantasy equivalent. It's nothing like Cepheus Deluxe, but it has the same tingle effect. So we'll talk a bit about that, about what it is. We'll go through the game, at least through the quick start, and we'll talk about why that is so very good indeed. Now, at time of recording, sort of mid to late September 2022, our far right-wing neocon government have just gone through a mini budget, a sort of financial statement. This has required me to shout obscenities at the television, which I have spent some of the morning doing. And I'm just recovering from COVID as well. So the net effect of those two things is that I've got a slightly sore throat. So if I splutter over you as I'm talking, I'm terribly sorry. It's not meant. I do have a nice British cup of tea. Keep me going in these difficult times. But enough of such dreadful things. Let me instead talk a little bit about Dragonbane. Much more exciting than anything else I can think of right now. So here you go. So Dragonbane, what is it? Well, the Kickstarter, as I say, has recently concluded. It's been another very successful Free League one. You're learning Swedish. You should be. If you're a gamer, if you're a tabletop role-playing gamer, then you have to learn Swedish. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Okay, it's a country with about 10 million people in it, and you could argue that maybe it's a gateway language to some of the Scandinavian countries, but that's all irrelevant because all the best games are coming from Free League right now. So you're going to have to learn Swedish. I'm getting old. It's my excuse. I'm not sure I can learn Swedish now. Maybe I can. I have had a quick look at some quick starts for learning Swedish. But if we all learned Swedish, it would save Free League a lot of time having to translate things, because this nearly wasn't translated into English. They might have translated it into French. There's nothing wrong with that. Or German. But I think because there's a lot of interest in this game, they thought, well, hang on. All right then. Yeah, go on. We'll translate it into English as well. And I'm very glad that they decided to do that. And it's been very successful. So the Kickstarter's, I think, £500,000, a bit more. I think that's 7 or 8 million Swedish krona or something. So it's been a successful one. And it means that they're going to be able to deliver all the things that they've said. And they're working very hard on the game now. But what is it? Well, Dragonbane is an anglicised name. The Scandinavian name or the Swedish name, I think, and I will butcher it, is something like Drocher or Demona. Something like that. Dragons and Demons. And it's, if you like, it's the original Swedish role-playing game. So it goes back to about 82 or something like that. So it's got a 40-year history. So it's big in Sweden, and it's one of those games that I think are probably emotionally held quite tight to the heart in Sweden as a consequence. It's had about 10 or 11 iterations. Some of the later iterations through Riot Minds I've kind of become familiar with through Trudvang Chronicles. But its history is very much in tune with my history. And I think that's why I get the tingles. So it's based originally on Magic World, which is a sort of a small booklet-like basic role-playing game from Chaosium. Those of you who go back, like me, into the dawn of time, will remember it when it first came out. It was quite a slim little booklet. It was a D100 percentile system using the basic role-playing engine. So, you know, percentage skills, RuneQuest-y, Call of Cthulhu, Stormbringer, Elric, Ringworld, all that kind of great stuff of the 80s and indeed still today, including the gold book of basic role-playing as well. That's its history. So it's a roll-under system, quite traditional, and I like it. So I like that kind of game because I can mentally see the action because in the way that the game is constructed and presented to me via the rules. It's not more realistic, but what it does is it paints a picture for my mental map where something like at the time AD&D First Edition absolutely does not. Still good fun game, but it feels much more game, and I don't make sense of what D&D is doing in that way. Whereas with BRP, basic role playing, I can, and this game has the DNA of that. It's about, as I say, it's about the 10th or 11th iteration of it, and what I like about it all the more is that it's not just a rehash of Magic World. In fact, Drokoro Dimona isn't either. It's become its own thing, but it has that DNA. What I like about Dragonbane is that it's more than just a rehash of sort of an old Chaosium game. It's got lots of tweaks in it. This most recent iteration has got lots of free league tweaks, pulling in ideas, particularly from things like Forbidden Lands and Year Zero engine products. They're so just tapping into their history of game design and applying a thin veneer of that onto DoD or Dragonbane as it's now going to be called for the English speakers. What I don't know is how the Swedish people are taking this particular iteration. Hopefully they'll take to it. I suspect it's quite different, and there are some differences which I am aware of just through looking at some of the information that's come through during the Kickstarter period. So that's kind of what it is. It's a generic fantasy game, and it doesn't come with a setting, which you could see as a flaw. I see as an absolute strength, because I want to apply this to n number of places, indeed my own places. I'm even looking at my old, probably contemporary with the original game, my original sort of homebrew game world. Well, maybe I could just slot this in, and I think I probably can. Timing wise, I've got the Kickstarter. I was so excited. Where is it? There you go. I actually printed out the Kickstarter. Spiral bound it, printed it out. Fantastic. I'm running this at one of our local conventions in literally a few weeks, and I can't wait to do it. I'm really looking forward, really excited about it. The game itself, well, the Kickstarter, the actual game, well, it'll appear in the shops sort of around about August 2023, so we're a little way off that. For those who've backed it, I think we get a beta copy of the PDFs, so an early view of it, possibly with even with some opportunity to influence the game a little bit. Not sure, but in any case, we'll get an early iteration somewhere around about the fall or autumn, as we might call it, in this year. So we're talking well, a couple of months actually. That'll be a couple of months if they can manage it. They're still working on it. They're still working on some of the magic elements of it. It's going to be magic, actually. I'm really, really excited. But let's take a look through it then. Let's take a quick look through it, and I'll try to sort of give you a flavour of why I think it's exciting. Let me just get to a PDF view. So we're gonna work our way through the quick start a little bit. Actually, I'm going to probably start the quick start on a character sheet. It probably seems to be the most appropriate thing to do. And we'll start with one of the pre-gen characters. The quick start itself is great. It's the typical thing. It's very slight cut, slice of the rules. Some pre-gens, of which I think you get 5 pre-gens, I want to say, and a little scenario to get going. And it's perfect just to get you going, which of course is exactly what it's for. The Kickstarter has come out with a whole brace of scenarios. Each scenario is designed to be done in a session. So these are not big sprawling epics. These are one session, 3 to 4 hours of play. Fantastic. 10 or 11 of those, you've got convention play coming out your ears. Fantastic. Bring them all together, a nice short segment, and also almost a Kickstarter or a quick starter for you to get going with the game. Anyway, let's actually take a look at it rather than me continuing to prattle about it. Here you go. We'll just switch over to the PDF view. Right, so this is a character from the Quick Start. I'm going to just scroll a bit, scroll, and see how a character is built up. What's there? Well, the first thing that you'll notice straight away is that it's not massively complicated. You know, it is fairly slender. And for those who are familiar with the BRP world, and to be honest, probably most games now, I mean, it's probably got bits of Symbaroum in here as well and all sorts of fantastic things. What have you got? Well, you can see there straight away, just running on across the top there, you have got 6 attributes or 6 characteristics. I can't quite remember what they call them, but you know, it's your stats. Yeah, 3 to 18 and 6 of them. Familiar. Be you a RuneQuesty or a D&D's kind of person. Strength, constitution, agility, intelligence, will, and charisma. These characteristics are used in play as a role. Sometimes you'll roll on a characteristic. Some of them give you things. So, for example, and here's a critical one for you. Your constitution is your hit points. Now, there might be some tweaks to that in the actual main game, but fundamentally that is true. So if you're on a 3 to 18 range, average of about 11, and indeed, good old, who is this? Archmaster Aedan has a constitution of 11. So if I just scroll down a little bit, you'll see down here, 11 hit points. That's all you get. So it's not a level and hit point game remotely. You are vulnerable. And we'll look at the sort of fall over and then get back up quality to the way that the game will play out. You've also got willpower. Willpower is important because that also, apart from anything else, being able to hold yourself when you meet fearful monsters and have to make fear checks. Willpower roll. You also get willpower points. And willpower points is what fuels your magic, if you have it. So it's spell points, effectively, but it also fuels kin and professional abilities which differentiate your character. So you can spend a couple of willpower points and bosh, you can do something extra cool because you are a elf or I don't know, you're a warrior or whatever the thing is. So you've got things like kin and you've got profession as a way of starting to shape and develop your character and make it a little bit different from everybody else and give you things that you can do. Other things you've got up here, top here, motivation. Motivation is important. It'll become more clear when the full game comes out, but motivation is something that motivates your character. If you play to your motivations, that's where you get your increases, I think, to skills. So it's about playing to your motivation. So it's about personality as well, but it's done very lightly and very easily. It doesn't overwhelm you with a lot of complexity, which I think is going to be a theme of the game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characteristics. You'll see under each one there is a little tick box. These are called conditions. So the game plays very simply. As I say, it's a D20 roll. You want to roll low. You want to roll equal to or less than your skill, or equal to than less than your characteristic, depending on what sort of roll it is. If you don't make it, you do have the option of pushing a roll. Pushing a roll being something very familiar to Year Zero Engine gamers, and that just simply means, well, you can pick up another die and have another go, and try and win, and try and get in. As soon as you push any kind of roll, you get a condition, and you have to tick one of these boxes. And each attribute has got a condition. So for strength, it's dazed. For constitution, it's sickly. For agility, it's exhausted. For intelligence, it's angry, and so on. I have to say, charisma, dirty. I don't quite understand that one. Does that mean ashamed? I think that might mean ashamed. Charisma, dirty. It's like when you have a McDonald's, I expect. And you just think, oh, did I really do that? Did I really eat that? It's probably that. But anyway, so that's probably not what they were thinking of at all. But so you've got pushes, and that gives you that opportunity to effectively roll again. The game doesn't have any modifiers, so there's not a +3, a +2, a +1, a blah, blah, blah. There is just boon and bane. Boon and bane, advantage and disadvantage. Roll multiple d20, get the best, roll multiple d20, get the worst, and boons and banes cancel each other out. That's it. That's it. Fast play, simple modifier, modifier being a boon or a bane. And if you've got a condition, anything that you roll that's associated with that characteristic, including skills, because skills are associated with characteristics, you're on a bane. And that's how it works. Really simple, but effective. I think effective. Skills themselves is a skill-based game. You've got at the top, you've got 7 combat skills. How good are you with axes? Which is a strength-based skill. Most of them are strength. There's still some agility as well for marksmanship. Marksmanship being the old missile stuff. Those are your combat skills. And then underneath that, you've got the sort of general skills, of which there aren't that many. 3, 6, is it 9? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 skills. So it's quite light in terms of the skills. Each of them are governed by a characteristic. I suspect when you start, you'll probably start with something like, I don't know, maybe half your attribute or something. Not sure. That'll be made clear. But then, of course, you've got opportunities to increase your skills over time. Not in a level and hit point kind of way, but you get sort of improvements to your skills. Abilities and spells. So this gentleman here, a human, is a wizard, an elementalist. So has magic as one of their special, presumably professional abilities. And a whole series of spells: fireball, pillow, gust of wind. We'll have a quick look at the spells later. And has a magic school skill of elementalism, 14. So I suspect, in terms of the way the game works, is you need to roll 14 or less to succeed at rolling a spell. And then you spend your willpower points and bosh, out comes your effect. There isn't much more. There is not much more to the game. Weapons are interesting. We can look at other characters as well. They do polyhedral dice worth of damage. You'll see there this staff does d8 damage. Doesn't have any damage bonus for strength because the strength is very average. There's 2 sorts of damage bonuses: strength for melee weapons, and for sort of very, very light or missile weapons, it's an agility damage bonus. That can add d4, d6, or something on top. I think a sword does about a couple of d6. If you've got a damage bonus of d4, you're rolling 2d6 and a d4, which is going to give you, about 8 or 9 in terms of an average. Don't forget how many hit points you've got. Not many is the answer. Armor absorbs on a scale of about 1 to 6, depending on how heavy the armor is. Possibly a bit more if you're wearing a helm. Yeah. There is a rule in here that iron and magic do not work together. So there's no heavy armor if you're a mage. That's it. That's just the rule. And there he is. And he's got a couple of things. He's got adaptive, which I suspect is his human ability. Humans are adaptive. When rolling for a skill, you can choose to make the roll against another skill level of your choice. You must be able to motivate how you use the selected skill. The GM has the final word, but it should be lenient. So you can find a way of not using the obvious skill, but another one, because you're adaptive. And this guy is a magi. So you can use magic. It's a kind of magic. That's a character. Simple, light, quick, but enough, I think, there to give you a really playable character, not only for short-term one-shot games, but I suspect over the long term as well. But it ain't crushing you with a lot of detail. I'm going to go to the top of the shop, and we'll have a quick look through it. See what else that it has to say. Just a few things then. So out of the box, and it will come in a box. There are 6 playable kin: human, halfling, dwarf, elf, mallard, yes, a duck, and wolfkin. So I'm not one of the big duck fans. I know there's plenty out there. I salute you, duck fans. They won't be appearing in my games, probably. And professions, of which there's a whole range of professions. Attributes I've mentioned. Dice is your classic polyhedral set, D20 being your core one. Low is always good on your D20s. Getting a 1 is brilliant, a 20 is not brilliant, a 1 is a dragon, hurrah! A 20 is a demon, boo! So for those of you who are big into D20 sort of D&D style games, just you have to flip mentally as to what is a good roll and what isn't. A nat 1, give me a nat 1. Other derived things, we've mentioned hit points and willpower points, damage bonuses based on either strength or agility, and your movements. There are 3 units of time in the game. Just mentioned down here, you can see at the bottom of here, a round, a stretch, and a shift. Yeah, I don't know, yeah. I can live with those as terms. Again, probably from a translation point of view, isn't perhaps the terms I would have used, but a round is 10 seconds. It's your classic short period of time where you can do something, typically in combat. A stretch is a 15-minute. That's your classic short rest where things flow back. So if you're wounded or you've lost willpower or something, or possibly you've got conditions down, some of that will come back in your 15-minute rest. And a shift. And a shift is your 6-hour rest. Or 6-hour period of time, should I say. And a shift rest pretty much gives you everything back. So they've gone quite heroic. I think earlier iterations of the game, you get a hit point back a week or something. Well, that's no good if you want to play heroic fantasy. You need to bounce back and get back to action. Is it realistic? God, no. we don't want realism. We want fictional realism. And so it gives you that. And in that sense, it's a bit like 5e, when you sort of wake up after a long rest and suddenly everything's doohickey fine. Thank you. They've got things like the motivation I've mentioned. They've got encumbrance. Encumbrance is pretty simple. You can carry a number of things equal to half your strength. Armor doesn't count as a thing, but swords and backpacks and spell books and other things, unless it's a small thing, in which case you just don't bother counting it. 100 coins, I think, is a thing. Things like that, and it's very simple. And then when you get over your encumbrance, you get over your half, then I think it's a very simple rule that you just need to make a strength test if you want to do something. And if you make the test, you're fine. Or I think you're fine. I think if you fail the test, then you can, I don't know, I think it's like you get a bane. You just hard. Because you're lumbering about, or you can't move. So it's very simple. And it's restrictive enough that if you get beyond your half strength in terms of your carry stuff, you really don't want to go there. You don't want to go there because it's just going to be a complete pain. Over encumbered. Let's just check that roll. You can temporarily carry more than your normal encumbrance limit. You must make a strength roll whenever you want to move in a round or of combat or walk for a shift of travel. So you want to travel somewhere, you've got to make a roll. If the roll fails, you must either drop what you are carrying or stay where you are. Okay, so it's actually, you're just not going very far if you're carrying too much. So that's an example of a rule. It's pretty damn simple to apply at the table, and it's easy to administer. You're not worrying. They're not bothered about arrows or things like that. It's boring. Just crack on. Rolling the dice, we've got dragons and demons, as I mentioned. Dragons is your critical. A demon, you can't push a demon roll. So you're just stuck with it. You just failed. And it's, probably there's license to make it worse. I'm not sure if there are fumble tables in here, but the artwork is gorgeous, isn't it? The artwork is absolutely gorgeous, and it's got they're using artists from way back in the history of the game, and it's lovely to see it. And it's highly evocative, and it's a strong style, very strong style, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a big selling point. Because it talks about the game. It talks about what the game is. I'd say it's early to mid medievalism, kind of your classic D&D fantasy, really. And for me, that's another strength, actually. And it doesn't come with a setting. No settings in here. And no setting will be in the 100-page rule book that's coming. 100 pages. Nice and svelte, easy to apply. Pick your setting, make your setting, apply a setting that you've already got, slot it in. Obviously, it comes with assumptions. The game, like any game, comes with assumptions. So you need to think about what those are. I don't quite know what all the assumptions are because I haven't got the full game yet. But I reckon highly applicable. More to come on that because the game is going to develop in a very interesting way, I think. Things like only one chance. You've got some breakout text here. Basically, if you fail a roll, that's it. Don't keep rolling. Either change the circumstances, apply a different approach, maybe get some help. Something has got to change, or you're stuffed. Fair enough. Boons and banes, we've talked about. Opposed rolls. Opposed rolls, have I mentioned that? I think I probably have. With opposed rolls, so stealth versus perception, or whatever it might be, you both roll. Obviously, if one succeeds and one fails, that's easy. If both succeed, then the one that scores the lowest wins. So low is always good. And again, that's very easy to apply. Nice. Npcs and skills. So NPCs will have a function very similar to PCs, but there are two kinds of adversaries, I think, in the game. There are NPCs, that's other kin, including goblins and probably some orcs or something, would count as NPCs. And then you've got monsters. And monsters function quite differently. And they're very, very much akin to what we had in Forbidden Lands and possibly other Year Zero Engine games, I'm not sure. We'll have a look at monsters in a moment. They're enormous fun. And as someone who comes from 4E D&D, you might not think there are any parallels, but for me, the monsters here have got that cool, slightly randomised, but emblematic powers that will mess things up in interesting ways. So they're quite flavourful. And that's really nice. It's really nicely done. So, NPCs, pushing rolls we've talked about, and getting these conditions, which you don't really want, but you can get rid of them quite quickly, again. Help from others. That's one of those rules, isn't it? Whenever you get a new game, you say, how do I heal people? How do I help people? How do I hit people? How do I make it? Well, helping people is you just say how you're helping someone. You narrate it. And if it makes sense in the fiction, great. And the recipient of that help gets a boon. An advantage roll. That's it. Simple. Really simple. Love it. Great. Here we go. Combat and damage. This is where we start to get a flavour for the action economy of the game, which I think is interesting. I wasn't sure about it to start with. I need to run the game, of course, which I'm doing reasonably soon. The more I think about it, the more I like it. I like that the action economy is built the way it is. Let's have a look at it. Rounds and initiative. So how does initiative work? So that's one of the other things you always look at for a new game, isn't it? How does initiative work in this game then? What are they doing? Have they got one? It's card draw. So standard playing deck. Just take out 1 to 10. Ace being low, ace being a 1, and a winner, because low is better. So you deal out the cards to the adversaries and to the players. Adversaries can be grouped under a card, and you then reveal, and then you go upwards from ace up to 10. That's it. But that isn't it. Then there's the twists, and this is why I like the game, because Free League have layered on these little twists, which I think will make the game fun. Something called waiting. So when it gets to your turn on your card, instead of doing your thing, you can swap your card with somebody at a higher point in the initiative order. And that means that you're making somebody else or encouraging somebody else to do the next thing in terms of the sequence of the round. And the cards all are dealt every round. And this is quite useful, and it's particularly useful because of the action economy. Because in the action economy, you get to move and do one thing. And that movement can be flexibly applied across your turn. So you can move a bit, do an action, and then move a bit. Or move, do an action. Or do an action and move, kind of thing. So it's fairly flexible. But you get one thing. one thing. So it's not BRP where you get an attack and a parry. You get one thing, which could be one of those two things. Or indeed possibly something else. There's a big list of possible actions. But fundamentally, we're talking a reaction, a block to an attack. Not all attacks can be blocked, or a dodge, or an attack. And you've got to choose which you do. And that's where it becomes quite interesting. So by giving somebody else a turn, that means that they can do their thing. Or you can give it to a monster and make them do their thing, unless they have multiple things, which we'll come to. And once they're done, they're committed, which means that everyone else knows that they're committed, and therefore they can pile in. One action. And that's interesting. The only thing I'm going to say concerned, I'm not really that concerned, but, it's made me think is what happens when a hero is facing 4 goblins? I mean, the answer might be never face 4 goblins. But, even if you're a massive hero, what do you do? Now, I think probably there's some talents there, or some cool abilities that might let you do multiple things for the higher level. I say level, not thinking of levels, heroes. But for your beginning characters, you've got one defense, and then you are open to it. It's then, please say they don't hit me, or I'm going down. And if I go down, I ain't coming back up again very quickly. If I'm on my own, I need help. And so there's a lot of cooperation is encouraged as well. So it's quite interesting. It's a quite interesting action economy. The other thing you can do is you can use your action as a further move. That's called a dash. So you move twice. And you've got a movement rate in meters. We're in Europe now, so it's sensible. It's metric, so it's 2 meter squares, not 5 feet. You don't have to use, obviously, a grid. I suspect people will, much as people do in 5e. But you can see how light the game looks. So theatre of the mind, absolutely. The game is often described as one that you can take out to a campsite and just play in a campsite. It's that kind of level. A lot of fun, but it has that weight that will enable you to run a really good, lengthy, punchy kind of a meaningful campaign over time, if you want to. Lots of actions, melee attacks, ranged attacks, parries, dodges, taking cover, giving somebody aid, first aid, a healing skill to keep them up, keep them going. Activating an ability. These abilities we've been talking about. You want to activate one, well, that's an action. Unless otherwise specified. So, bosh, I'm going to do an action. Cast a spell. That kind of stuff. It's standard stuff, really. But you get one. And free actions, you don't have to worry about, like, changing position, drawing a weapon, dropping something, shouting. Possibly at the television, at your pathetic government. I don't know. It didn't feel like a free action at the time. It felt like a very big action. Movement, dashing, we've done. Standing, crouching, that's a free action. Passing through a closed door is half your move. I mean, it's really simple stuff. I think certainly when you compare it to the action economy, in something like 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which is great, it works very well. Or indeed even the action economy, something like Pathfinder 2nd edition, the sort of very nice 3 action economy. Again, that works well. The fact you've got just the one, it's going to speed things up. Deal the cards, action, 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 action. Gather the cards, deal them again, action, 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 action. That's how it should work, I suspect. And there's some stuff about moving past enemies. In fact, there's kind of like a disengage action, which you have to undertake if you're within the zone of control of an enemy. So there's kind of got that sort of, sort of zone of control thing, attacks of opportunity, effectively. So you need to make a special action to get away before you can properly move safely, or just it's then a free attack. It's a free action. So you've got that. So they've got some bits and pieces of strategy. I think a lot of the strategy, as I say, will come with the initiative, with waiting or not waiting. How that plays out and how quickly that plays out, I don't know. I don't really know. Yeah, some stuff to help you with melee combat. I mean, they are largely, as you'd expect, extrapolations of the core game. So a crit is a critical hit. If you're doing a melee attack, you'd kind of expect that, I think. And you can choose what the effect is on that. You can either have double damage, so roll your damage dice twice. And my goodness me, if you're rolling 2d6 for a sword or something, and you get a critical, that's 4d6 for a sword against a 10 hit point thing with a couple of points of protection armor. Ouch. Or you can perform a second attack immediately as a free action against either the same opponent or one that is adjacent, 2 meters away. Or indeed a piercing attack where the armor has no effect. There's a few things which I'm going to say, resonates from the sort of basic role-playing world. So weapons have a durability. Much as in old RuneQuest, weapons had hit points. Much as in Trudvang Chronicles, weapons have things like a blocking value or something that they have, which is effectively hit points. This works a little bit simpler. If a weapon is hit, as in you parry with a weapon and it's hit and it goes over its durability, then using that weapon it will then be with a bane. Ouch. Ouch. All further uses of it suffers a bane. I suspect you'll be able to hammer it back into shape, but that's going to require a craft roll. Is there a craft skill? I don't know. Maybe there is. But anyway, you have to go to a blacksmith or something and get it sort of smashed out and repaired. So there's things like that. Monsters, for example, as a rule, monster attacks, this is the thing about monsters we're coming to, cannot be parried. They can be dodged. Maybe. But they can't be parried. And that's because of the nature of the type of attacks that they are. Some monster attacks can be parried because of the nature of what they are. Stuff about dodging, dodge and movement. Yeah. And just as you've got for melee combat, you've got some guidance on range combat. Again, it's not a lot, but it's enough. It's enough. It's doing it in 3 pages. Or whatever. Is it 3 pages? I don't know. And some of it's sort of kind of a bit of a repeat. So you're on kind of a roll, on a theme. Yeah, not much at all, actually. More stuff on conditions, healing and resting. As I said, in a stretch rest, which is those 15-minute blocks of time, a short rest, you can heal a d6 hit points or 2d6 if you get some successful healing on that. And you get 2d6 willpower back, in fact, which is nice. And you can heal 1 condition of your choice. And on a shift rest, I think it just basically all flows back. You're fine. So that's it. That's kind of it. And there's probably some healing magic as well, which makes it even better. Better. I think it's probably an area for expansion. I think that might be an area for expansion. But only if you want it, The core game. It's nice. Other hazards, things like poison. Poison will comes in 3 potencies. Depends how strong the poison is. And it's an opposed roll with your constitution. Simple as that. And again, if you win that opposed roll, you'll get the minor effect of the poison. If you don't win, you get the major effect of the poison. And then it talks about, there's a few different poisons here: lethal, paralyzing, and sleeping. And depending on whether you get the minor or the major effect, you just check the effect there. Either it'll kill you, or it'll damage you, or it'll make you dazed or exhausted, a sleeping potion, or it will knock you out. Really simple to apply again. Really simple. And I guess those rolls can be pushed, I imagine. Fear. Fear. Some monsters have fear attacks, and you've got to make a willpower test. If you fail the willpower test, you've got a fear table. Number 3, what do you get? Panting. Panting. The intense fear leaves you out of breath and makes you exhausted. You basically, it gives you a condition just by being in the close proximity to this thing. It might not even be a monster. It could be anything. It could generate fear. Monsters. Monsters. So monsters, as opposed to NPCs, are slightly different. They've got a speed, which means they can have more than one action in a round, which means they have more than one initiative card. They move. And they have random attacks which cannot be parried. They always hit. And they don't ever repeat their attacks. It's often on a 1 to 6 table. You roll d6. I'll do that attack. So mix it up a bit. You can generally dodge, but not always. Or perhaps it's an attribute or a characteristic roll to get out of it. So there's usually something. But your highfalutin warrior who's got a massive parry isn't necessarily going to do very well against a monster, because the monsters have attacks which are quite different to your straightforward blades flashing in the dark. Very, very nice. Monsters have armor as well. Some monsters have resistance and immunities. You can't persuade a monster, it says here, unless it says otherwise. I do like the idea of trying to persuade a dragon. I'll have to see what dragons look like when I get the game. And fear. Magic. Again, I mentioned magic. Schools of magic. You get skills. It's a skill. And you can only cast magic if you have kind of the ability to do that. And that's granted by choices that you make in character generation, be it your kin or your profession maybe. Willpower points to buy them. It's a nice rule here about power from the body. If you're running out of willpower points and you have to cast that spell, you can pick any of the polyhedral dice from D4 up to D20 and roll it. And that's the number of willpower points you get to immediately spend on a spell. It's also the number of hit points damage you take, though. So it's do it if you want, but it's the last gasp draw of your vitality to get magic out. It's quite a nice little thing. I mentioned magic and iron doesn't mix. Power levels. Spells have 3 power levels, at least in the quick start. I think Drocker or Demona may have had 5 spell levels in the base game. I could have made that up. I'm not Swedish and I haven't played the game, but I think I saw that. As it is, we've got 3 levels here, which is how many willpower points the spell costs and how powerful the spell will be when you cast it. So that's kind of basically what we are doing here. So that's kind of where we are with power levels in spells. So that's kind of it for magic, really. That's probably all you really need to worry about. I quite like it. I think it's quite good. You don't get a lot in the quick start, obviously, but you do get 2 or 3 spells, which I think are enough to sort of illustrate how the game actually works. And then you've got the scenario itself, and I'm not going to go into the scenario now because that'll be a spoilers. But I am looking forward to running it later in October, actually, so not too far away. So there you are, a quick run through the actual PDF itself. And as I say, I'm really excited about the game. I think it's going to come out really, really well. The Kickstarter itself has delivered some really nice product, if you like. So it's got sort of custom dice with icons on it. It's got a cloth map. It's got some cards. It's got some stand-ups. It's got the rule book, obviously. It's got a Dungeon Master screen because it's that kind of game. All that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to getting hold of the physical game next year. But there's quite a lot to come before then, including, and I want to mention this, a third-party license. So the third-party license will allow people, even people like me, to write for the game. So adding new rules, adding new monsters, adding new spells, maybe entire new schools of magic, adventures, maybe even settings. So everything around the game we'll be able to write for. And I'm hoping to see a lot of third-party content accelerate and come through even before the game is formally launched. And I think that there's precedence for that with other games. So that is pretty exciting. And I think I'll probably leave it there for today and for this video. As I say, I'm really excited about the game. I think it's going to be really, really good indeed. And I can see myself kind of making a lot of use of this game, even from towards the end of this year and certainly into next year. Hope that was of interest. Stick with me. I will do some more on Dragonbane over the course of the next few months and certainly into next year. And we'll see where we go with it. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put it. I've looked at Greyhawk even as a place to do it. I've looked at my own homebrew world as a place to run it. But I've yet to work that one out. For now, there's an awful lot to go at. So, all the best. Enjoy your gaming. And I will speak to you very soon. Cheers.